Now, in 2017-2018, domiciled under the Ministry of Education, girls in public schools, secondaries were to get free sanitary towels, even like pads, at a cost of 470 million, approximately 10 million per county. But several years down the line, this program is facing headwinds.
In the intricate fabric of women's experiences, menstrual health isn't merely a biological process. It's a cornerstone of their overall well-being. But when the silence surrounding this essential aspect of women's lives allows stigma and poverty to persist, what becomes of their health and dignity?
At first, nilikuwa naumwa na tumbo. I didn't know what was happening because I went to school and nikaanza kusikia to some weird feeling, and I didn't really get what it was until my friend came and told me that there's something on my dress and that I shouldn't worry. It's something that all girls go through. I wasn't lucky enough because she didn't have a pad, so we had to improvise and use tissues. I remember not going for breaks because the stain was visible enough for the boys in class to see. And since they also didn't understand what was happening, they started laughing at me. So I had to stay away from them. Nijifiche tu kwa class for the entire break until saa ya kuenda nyumbani ikafika. So nakumbuka nilifunga sweta kwa kiuno while going home. My other classmates would ask what was happening, and I would just say that it's a new style I'm trying to invent. Kufika nyumbani pia, you know, now that I'm trying to understand what was happening with my body, I was also afraid to tell my mom. So nimenyamaza tu with the cramps and all that. So I had to stay in the house for like 4 days.
The Ministry of Health implemented the menstrual hygiene management policy to ensure that every woman and girl can manage their menstrual hygiene with dignity and access to essential resources. Yet, despite these efforts, two formidable foes persist: period stigma and periodic poverty.
Period stigma refers to shame that is surrounded around when a lady or a young girl has periods. So stigma refers to the shame that is associated with that process. So it has a lot to do with a lady or a girl being looked down upon, or being seen as dirty or unclean, or a deformity rather than a natural process with the biological functioning of the lady's body. Period poverty refers to when someone lacks the finances or the resources to acquire products such as pads, menstrual cups, or even medication and other things that are taken to relieve pains that are associated with periods.
From the halls of power to the humblest of homes, period stigma leaves its cruel mark of shame, casts a dark shadow over menstruating women and girls. The stark reality hit home in 2023 when Senator Gloria Orwabo faced public humiliation, forced to leave the chambers due to visible bloodstains on her trousers.
This is the period stigma that is making our girls kill themselves. We have a girl who killed herself because of the same issue that I'm going through. And now I understand why. Because it is the women who actually are trying to make this a crime. Because maybe it's Valentine's Day. Because maybe Valentine's Day we are not supposed to have our periods. I am shocked that someone can stand here and say that the house has been disgraced because a woman has had her period. So women are not supposed to be in the Senate because we have periods. I don't understand. I'm in trousers, I've covered my... Honestly, the most someone can do is come to me and tell me, I'm sorry, are you having period cramps? Shall I give you painkillers? But instead, I am actually being castigated for having my period.
I'm not asking you to leave because you're out of order. But I'm asking you to leave so that you go change and come back with a cloth that is not stained. We appreciate you. Kindly proceed to go change and come back to the chambers.
Now let's break the ice. The conversation is what you were wearing when the Senate resumed its sittings. That was quite unconventional, and it has drawn a lot of headwinds and a lot of debate. Was it necessary?
Is it necessary to have periods? Because that's the question. It's not about what I was wearing, it's about what happened. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I stained my pants. I had a suit on, And I didn't think that it was good enough a reason for me to miss out on the opening of the Senate, because that was the first day. I had a lot of things that I wanted to push. I wanted to be there. It's my first time being in the Senate, so some of these things are my first time experiencing. So I thought I'm not going to miss that session for nothing. So there was just no time to go back home and change. Yeah.
This distressing event, alongside countless unreported incidents, underscored the pervasive nature of period stigma in Kenya.
She was trying to project what is happening outside here. Imagine those people who are not being able to be filmed. So I would really want to appreciate her for the efforts.
Period stigma thrives in silence and ignorance, and it's time to shine a light on this hidden epidemic.
As it's said, charity begins at home. Everything begins at home. So you'll find that there are certain societies or certain groups or certain families that a girl who is on their menses, they actually put aside, or they're locked out, or they're not allowed to serve foods, or they're not even allowed to interact with people until they're done with the 3 to 7 days of their cycle. So first of all, we need to break that narrative that periods is unclean, or it's dirty, or it's disgusting. And we need to sensitize communities and societies and even certain spaces to just make them see that that is a natural process for a girl, and actually, instead of shaming them, they should be proud, because having periods is actually a sign that you're fertile. It's a sign that you have the ability to give birth and procreate, which is part of the purpose why we're here on earth. The second thing is to introduce menstrual education to schools and to communities at large, because even the boys at class, they shouldn't laugh at me. Let's say, case in point, I'm sure you're familiar on this story. There's a young girl who committed suicide because she soiled her dress and her classmates laughed at her. So you see, those are the things that we need to break. And it costed a life. But you see, because so certain societies and communities and even people, they've not been sensitized enough to understand that instead of laughing at me for my natural being, there's a way to just approach the whole scenario. And this can only be achieved through menstrual education. You know, when you laugh at someone, you shame them. And when you laugh at someone, you're making them doubt even their existence. So to reduce all this, it's not just even the girls, it's the men. So what is this narrative that the boy child is being told about the lady or about the girls around them? Because as girls, it's very rare for girls to laugh at another girl because of they soiled their dress, because this is an issue that could happen to them. But then now the people around, starting with the teachers, going down to the boy child or the students in the school, how are they handling a lady? So it has to happen both for the girl child, but from the point of hygiene on how to handle themselves during that period, and for the boy child on matters to do with, you know, understanding that this is a natural process for the girl, and for them to also understand that their mothers went through it, their sisters or their cousins or just people around them.
Meanwhile, periodic poverty tightens its grip, denying access to essentials and ensnaring women and girls to a cycle of despair. In Kenya, a staggering 20% of females, regardless of their background, struggle to afford menstrual products, resorting to makeshift solutions like old rags, clothes, or even newspapers. But these makeshift remedies not only lack comfort, but also pose serious health risks, leading to infections and suffering.
First of all, let's keep in mind that these clothes, they're old, so they probably are not that hygienic or that clean. And you'll also find that some people are using newspapers, which use ink, which are exposed to other form of dirt and bacteria. And remember, this is not like skin on top of the skin. This is someone's vagina. And a vagina is very sensitive and prone to attracting very high-risk infections. So you'd find that a lot of girls who use these alternatives or techniques that is not pad related, they're either getting bacterial vaginosis or they're getting UTI infections and other form of skin irritation, because you're introducing something that has not been tailored or manufactured just for that specific need. When you look at pads, even in the composition and even in how they get to make them, they make them with things that are absorbent. That's why it's rare for it to leak. But then when you end up using things like lassos, rugs, and newspapers, the absorbent nature of these things is not very, it's not even there, you know.
Moving to high school, okay, I wouldn't say that I had much difficulties like primary school because now I was being given ile pocket money kidogo and I could afford some cheap pads. But now that came with issues of itchiness, unasikia kujikuna, sometimes unapata infections, and you know once you get infections ndio hiyo pia hospitali, that's another issue. Na since money was also not there, we could try and unavumilia tu because unasema unakumbuka nyumbani and how your parents are suffering, inabidi tu you stay with what you have and try and improvise if the situation is getting worse. So tulikuwa tunajaribu pia sometimes tunaletewa pad like na well wishers shule, but unajua also pia they were almost the same with the ones I was buying. So the issue of itchiness and all that also came with those pads.
For those from poor backgrounds, the struggle is even more dire, with more resorting to risky behavior to obtain pads, like indulging in transactional sex to obtain menstrual products, exposing them to the dangers of unwanted pregnancies and sexually transmitted diseases.
In the society, like for instance in Kenya, I'm sure we have heard of stories of young girls who exchange their bodies for them to get pads. You know, sometimes people can underestimate, they can look at it as not privilege because there's a girl somewhere who will lack that maybe 250 shillings to get themselves a packet of pads. So you'll see that they end up seeking other alternatives which pose a threat to the health of the child or the teen girl or even a lady for them to just get that packet of pads.
Access to menstrual hygiene is not a privilege, it's a basic right. There needs to be policies and resources to address such issues.
Some of the strategies that can be used to elevate period stigma and end period poverty, I'd say first of all community awareness, and this is done through awareness campaigns. And the reason as to why I recommend awareness campaigns is to break down the cultural taboos that are associated with period stigma. Like I always say, it always starts at home or it starts in the community. So once that is addressed, you'll find that the repercussions and all these things to do with period stigma, they're addressed because it's all about not making it shameful, but normalizing that this is normal, this is actually necessary, and for a lady to go through periods is actually a pride. Then the second thing that I'd advocate for is empowering young girls and women. You know, it's one thing to give me pads every month, but then it's another thing for me to be able to afford it myself. So it goes down to just empowering communities, maybe advocating for empowerment financially. So this is done through, it has to work with the government because now this is where they have to be trained how to make money, they have to be trained how to start small businesses or even sell certain products. And now it works concurrently with being mentored and being walked to on how to start a business, because if I'm able to afford it myself, I don't have to use other alternatives like old rags or even exchange my body just to get that commodity or even to purchase pads and all that. Then the third thing that can be done is working concurrently with the government. You know, the government is there for the people. So, and there are ministries that actually take care of this aspect of the girl child and this aspect of menstrual health. So lobbying and working with government hand in hand to champion initiatives that incorporate the society to partake into this agenda of menstrual health. And like one thing that we all know or that is out there is things like period banks. So period banks is where people get to donate pads, and these pads are distributed to certain schools and even to certain young girls for them to be able to just have something, or even just have that one packet of pad that will get them through their menstrual cycle. Another thing that I strongly recommend, and we've seen countries like Scotland, which has become the first country that has removed, they've subsidized their pads. They've not even just subsidized. Anytime pads are free. You see, like the way Kenya incorporated condoms in public toilets. That's what Scotland has done. So you'll find, even when I'm going to public toilets, there are pads there for me to use. So I feel like Scotland has set the pace, and it's time that other countries walk in line with this, you know, because the same way they treated condoms and safe sex is the same energy that should match up with menstrual health. So it's my hope that Kenya will fall in line, and that even the failed policies or the policies that we haven't yet seen them, that they'll actually come to pass, and that these products will just be free, because it's just the girl. You know, they may say it's expensive, but if they manage to put condoms in public toilets for free, and this is for the male gender, then why wouldn't pads be put there for the female gender?
To be a girl! To be a girl! I will not be ashamed anymore. I will not be ashamed anymore. Of periods. Of periods.
But amidst this darkness, a flicker of hope emerges. It's time to rewrite the narrative, to empower every woman and girl with the resources they need to thrive during menstruation. From innovative menstrual products to comprehensive education, from accessible healthcare services to destigmatization campaigns, there are ways to pave the path towards menstrual equity.
You have actually sponsored a motion where to have the provision of free sanitary towels and to end what you term as period poverty, you know, the shadow pandemic that we do not talk about. Now, this is not a new program. Looking back at 2017-2018, so why now?
Actually, the first bold step that the Kenyan government took was in 2011, when they introduced now the program of provision of sanitary towels.
Yes.
That was in 2011. They spent around 420 million just distributing. It was a first good step. And then we had a setback with the 12th Parliament, because the 12th Parliament actually reduced the budget by half, from 470 million to 260 million. And, you know, already from 2011, when we were trying to address the issue, the 420 million was not sufficient. It was a starting point. And of course, the intention or the expectation was that the budget will keep increasing to a point where all schools were actually accessing the free sanitary towels. But, you know, a lot happened, and the issue of period poverty was actually not taken seriously, or maybe there was not, I will say, political goodwill. So you can see that we have actually regressed in terms of the developments that we should have been having now. From 2011 to 2023, surely we should be at the point where we are saying that we are almost getting to all the national schools having that access to the sanitary towel.
Now, this motion that you are sponsoring come next week, how then will it now put this into perspective and become more effective?
The motion actually addresses two things. The issue of how to legislate the program, because currently the program is running on a sort of amendment act that is embedded in the Education Act. That's not really, you can enforce it, but it's a lot of the details are actually dependent on the political goodwill. For instance, budget allocation is not stipulated. It's not a percentage of a ministry budget. It's not a, you know, it just depends on which government of the day. So it means if we have a government that is patriarchal, that does not really care about this issue of period poverty, they might even say we are just going to allocate 50 million, and what, you know, it's really dependent on who's in office. So I'm trying to find a way to legislate that so that it doesn't matter who's in office, but in terms of budget allocations, at least to some extent, or in terms of a financial provision to some extent to which we can try and legislate, we can see that through. The second thing is the whole end-to-end of the program needs to be streamlined so that we don't have loopholes where people are taking advantage of the program. For instance, the procurement regulations around it is a big thing because, you know, first of all, Kenya was the first African country that took out the taxes on pads, but that means only the final product. So when you import the pads, then you don't pay the import duty and stuff on the final product. But when you look at the local manufacturers, they don't import the final product, they import the materials. And the raw materials are still highly taxed. So we need to find a way where we can address that so that, you know, the period poverty starts from the point of poverty in itself. It means that people don't have the capital, the money to buy, to purchase these items. Why don't they have the money? They are not employed, they don't have businesses. So the local manufacturers actually play a key role in terms of even participating in ending period poverty. How? When you have the companies, the local manufacturers actually getting some of these tenders, then it spurs the creation of casual jobs for quite a while. And that is a source of income for many of parents who are actually now using the same money to purchase their sanitary towels. So we need to regulate on issues on how to ensure that that industry thrives. That's one thing. The other thing is we must also specify the frequency at which government provides. Currently, government provides once a year. There's a provision of once a year. So you get your batch, and from the research that I've done, the students get between 5 to 7 packets, those that have received, between 5 to 7 packets for the year. Now you have your period every month, you know, every month you're using a minimum of 2 packets. If you do the math, we are barely getting to the point where we are saying that we are giving access to that. So I'm also trying to see how is it that we can legislate around that. And then finally, it's also the issue of the whole period poverty and period stigma, period shaming. What happened to me in Parliament was, it was saddening. And you see, people were saying, yeah, but you need to have figured out your days and what days. A lot of, I would say, ignorance around menstruation, because basic things like understanding that not every woman has a regular period clearly came out as a concern, that, you know, the community at large doesn't really understand the menstruation issue. But not only that, it's the idea of it's okay to be kicked out of your workplace because you have had an accident that has stained, because people see that as shameful and dirty, and so you cannot be subjecting people to that. That is the same stigma and the shame that, you know, when our students who accidentally stain their clothes are kicked out. So we have to be able to also legislate that to an extent that it is not a point of authority that the child feels like I can't go to school because in the events that I stain, I'll be punished, I'll be shamed.
In the battle against period stigma and periodic poverty, silence is the enemy and action is the weapon. Let's raise our voices, break the chains, and pave the way for a future where every woman and girl can manage their menstrual health with dignity and pride. Together, we can ensure that no one is left behind in the fight of menstrual equity.
For the girl child, I'd like to tell them that be proud of your menses, because this is a symbol that, it's a symbol for womanhood. If you're able to menstruate and if you're able to bleed monthly, it means that you're able to birth and you're able to bring children into life. And you're also answering to the whole agenda and the purpose of filling the earth. So be proud of it, don't be ashamed of it, and don't let the negative voices or the negative taboos such as this is sinful or this is unclean get into your head.
End period shame and stigma.